Coming up on today's Locked On Angels. All right, do the Angels have a legitimate chance at winning the AL West in 2022? We explore that and many other questions right here in today's Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Locked On Angels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day every single day. And Happy New Year to everybody. I'm Steve Granado, your host, at Steve Granado over on Twitter, Granado. And of course, our Locked On account is at Locked On Angels. We got Angels coverage here in the offseason 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, we have questions from you here today. We're going to be answering a bunch of them. We have some stuff about the lineup construction, some Christmas questions. We have a voicemail that we need to get to, and we have some realistic expectations to talk about here for 2022. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Our first question of the day here comes from Toon Jam, at Halos Jam, over on Twitter. Says, do you see the Halos winning the division this year? That's 2022. Love the pod and take care. Thanks, Toon Jam, for the nice comments here. All right, gut reaction. If I'm being honest, no. With this team, the team that is currently constructed and on the roster right now, I still think the Angels are going to do something once this lockout ends. But with this team right now, I think no. And I'll get to it here in just a second because we have another question that kind of ties into this. So I'm going to spend the majority of this first part of this show talking about this. To win the AL West in 2021, the Angels would have had to gone 96 and 66, right? 96 and 66, meaning they'd have to win 15 plus more games. They finished with 77 wins. So, almost 20 more wins the Angels would have had to have gotten. So with the current team, are they 20 wins better? No, they are not. Houston obviously won it with 95 victories. And with the moves that the Angels have made, I do not think that they're a 96-win team. That is a tough ask for a team, once you factor in injuries and the shortstop hole and the catcher hole-ish, quote-unquote. There's a lot of question marks on that Angels roster right now. You'd have to have so many things go right to win 96. Do I think Houston's going to be as good in 2022 as they were in 2021? No, probably not without Carlos Correa. But you also got to factor in that Seattle is probably going to be right there pushing all season long, unlike they were in 2021, right, where they really made a push towards the end. So there's a couple of factors in the AL West that is going to hurt the Angels in that regard, or however you want to look at it, a push-pull with the Astros potentially maybe falling off a little bit. I wouldn't say that the Astros are non-contenders. That's not even close to what I'm saying. But there are factors that lie within the Angels right now, and I just don't think that the moves that they have made are necessarily moves that are going to push them over that 96 win mark. Is it going to take 96 wins to win the AL West? Maybe not, maybe 92, but even then, so are they, right there, up there? A lot of things still have to go right. Again, this kind of leads into our next question coming from Hav Gordo, at the Hav Gordo over on Twitter. With the Angels, or with where the current, I can't read right now. With where the Angels are currently with Thor and all other signings, do you believe we can make a wild card spot with a healthy team? So this is where I wanted to tie it in, right? So these two questions kind of go hand in hand. Okay, so there is really no reason that this Angels roster, again, currently right now, no other changes. If this is the opening day roster with this team healthy, there's no reason the Angels can't make a wild card. So that is one thing. Again, I don't know if they're necessarily AL West champions, but a one-game playoff seems pretty doable. So, and this isn't, Bible or end-all be-all here. I'm just taking some, kind of cherry-picking a stat here, but just wanted to kind of show and do a little thought experiment. So let's talk about WAR, right? Wins above replacement. If you're new to this stat or you've heard it but don't really understand it, it's essentially how much better a player is compared to the league average player, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at WAR for the Angels. And I'm going to do it without even adding anything to the roster. I'm just going direct changes from last year to this year. Let's talk Rendon and Trout. If Anthony Rendon plays a full healthy season in 2022, at his absolute best in his career, Anthony Rendon is a 7 WAR player. So that's 7 more wins above replacement. His replacement in 2021 essentially was, Gosselin, Mayfield, or whatever the revolving door was over at third base, mostly Mayfield, right? Gosselin and Mayfield together, negative 0.5 WAR. So there's a 6.5 WAR difference there in favor of the Angels for Rendon. Again, this is best case scenario, right? I mean, this is all theoretical, so why not go best case scenario? So Rendon is a 7-win player at his peak in his career. He could do better, probably can do worse. He can't expect the best every single season. Trout, right? Did not have Trout. Yes, he gave a little bit. It wasn't much. Did not have a full impact in 2021. So if he has a full impact in 2022, at his best, Mike Trout is a 10.5 WAR player. So that's 10.5 games better than the league average player. His replacement for the majority of the year in center field before Brandon Marsh started playing in center and stuff, Juan Lagares, right? Juan Lagares was playing, was playing a lot of center field for the Angels. Negative 0.3 WAR in 2021. So if you factor just these two things, Rendon and Trout, that is 17.5 games better, right? 17.5 games better at their best. That's not even factor in Juan Lagares, Gosselin, Mayfield, just about a game under replacement. So if you're doing the math there, that's about a little over 18 games better just with Trout and Rendon if they're playing at their absolute best of their career. There you go. So again, this is all theoretical, but if they are, in the lineup there, that puts them 100% at the 90-win threshold, right? At least, without factoring anything else in. That puts the Angels around a 90 threshold. I know WAR is not the end-all be-all, and I'm not saying that this is 100%, but just by that number alone, the Angels just get a heck of a lot better, and the numbers are there to prove it, right? That's not factoring in getting Noah Syndergaard if he's super healthy, right? Getting a Max Stassi having a good year, or David Fletcher bouncing back. And there's a Jared Walsh getting even better, or, Brandon Marsh and Joe Adell really shining. There's a lot of factors right now at play for the Angels for them to contend in 2022. But just those two things alone, I think pushes them up way better off. Even if they're half of that, right? That makes them what? 8 games better. So that really helps out a lot, and that's not factoring in everything else. So Hav Gordo, Toon Jam, I really appreciate your questions. Again, we always send out our questions on Sundays to be answered on Mondays. This episode is brought to you by Built Bar. It's New Year, and that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar makes it easier to stick with your resolution because it tastes so good, you'll actually want to eat it, unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy or taste like super chemically. Some of them honestly can get pretty nasty. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring, right? By week 3 of the new year, you might be like, you know what, dude, this is not worth it. I want chocolate. But guess what? Built Bar's got chocolate. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Those are some good numbers. We were just talking about numbers a second ago. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. It's like the same thing, right? And of course, there's a bunch of different flavors you can choose from. Go check out Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, that's Built.com, LOCKED15, 15% off. Back here on Locked On Angels answering your questions. We have one coming in here from Michael Hawkins83 over on Twitter. This is a little bit of a different style of question. I want to answer this one because it kind of brings up some interesting stuff. Michael Hawkins says, what's your feeling about buying jerseys during the lockout? I received 2 awesome gifts for Christmas, a Tim Salmon and David Fletcher jerseys. I'm totally excited about the gifts, but also feel conflicted because I know they were purchased during the lockout. Thoughts? Michael, thank you so much for checking in. Again, you can always check in with us on Sundays to be featured on the show on Monday at Locked On Angels. Yo, man, one, sick. Those are some good gifts. So if you're worried about revenue splitting and all that kind of stuff, I don't have a 100% answer on this. One, I'll tell you straight up, don't feel guilty about this. Don't feel conflicted. Be happy, man. Those are great gifts, and wear those with pride. Don't worry about it. I definitely do not worry about it. But as far as the revenue splits are this concerned, I couldn't find a 100% answer on this. I did do some Googling and looking up and try to figure out how this kind of stuff gets handled during the lockout, and I have a little bit of an answer. So the revenue from jersey sales and like likeness rights and all that kind of stuff, it gets split evenly among the players. So like a jersey sale has like 50-50 rights here, right? Because it's the team name, right? It says Angels on the front. So that money goes to the owners, and then the name on the back, right? That goes to the player, or to the players union, I should say. So it doesn't matter about like who, like it's not like Mookie Betts, right? Like Mookie Betts sold the most jerseys or whatever. I don't know who sold the most jerseys last year, but let's say he did, or Shohei sold the most jerseys. It doesn't necessarily matter because it gets split evenly on the players union anyway. So Tim Salmon, you have nothing to worry about there. His likeness is being used and he gets his own money from that because he's not part of the union. It doesn't get split at all. So don't worry about Salmon. So for Fletcher, obviously David Fletcher is in the MLB Players Union. So I don't know how this split is currently working during the lockout right now and how that all plays out, but typically the money gets divided up at the end of a season. So in theory, like the money spent this offseason, like say it was bought in like November, right? Or even, the month of December during the lockout, right? I believe that money would be going to the players in the 2022-2023 offseason. So like right when the 2022 season ends. That's how I understand it. I'm not 100% on that. Again, I did some Googling and I found some things. And the money essentially goes back to the players as like a rebate for their union dues. So that money, I don't know if this is the case this year, but it could potentially be withheld anyway by the players union. So they create a savings account kind of thing in case there is a potential strike for the players to, kind of feed off of that account. So I know this is like really in depth because you're worried about how you got jerseys here for Christmas. One, super cool, but that's kind of how this stuff works. It's a little weird. It is union-y. It gets split evenly. I wouldn't worry about it, man. Just be excited you got the Angels jerseys and happy or merry late Christmas to you. Okay, man, we got another question coming in here, and apropos name, disappointed Angels fan asked me, what do you think the rotation's combined average ERA needs to be for the team to be competitive in 2022? Thank you so much for your question. Okay, so I looked at the top 12 teams or the teams that I thought were competitive in 2021. So your teams like all the way down to the Braves, all the way up to the Dodgers and Giants and Astros, White Sox. So this also includes the Toronto Blue Jays, the Seattle Mariners. And looking at these numbers, if you're just looking at ERA 1, I don't think that's the greatest number to look at. I'm not alone in that thinking. But if you're just looking at team ERA for those teams, a lot of them, it ranges. Obviously, the lowest is in the mid to low threes. You got the Brewers checking in at 3.50 last year. The Giants all the way down to 3.24. And then the Dodgers were all the way down at 3.01. They had the best ERA in baseball last year. But that is obviously an anomaly. You don't need to be the best team in ERA to compete, right? So weirdly enough, if you look at the Boston Red Sox, all the way up to 4.26, which is league average. So the Red Sox were league average, and the Mariners were actually worse than league average at 4.30. So as far as the ERA is concerned, I'm not super crazy about that number. You obviously can be almost a run and a half worse and still be in the running when it comes into late towards October. The Angels were 22nd in ERA last year at 4.69, so obviously not good. That definitely needs to improve. That is across the board numbers, but I look more at WHIP. I've talked about WHIP a lot, walks and hits per innings pitched. I care about that a ton, about how many players you're allowing on base per inning. That matters a ton to me. And when you're looking at those numbers, almost every single one of those teams is well under the 1.3 rank. The Cardinals were up at near highest at 1.300. The Red Sox were up at 1.378. They were the highest last year. And of course, the Dodgers were all the way down at 1.097, which again is ridiculously low. And that is with an injured starting rotation last year. So for me, the numbers I'm looking at again are WHIP are the big one. But if you're just looking at ERA and WHIP, what the Angels need to improve on, again, they were at a 4.69 ERA last year and a 1.357 WHIP. If you can get that sub 4 and 1.3 on the WHIP, I think the Angels are competitive next season. totally doable. Thanks again for your question. We got a couple more here. This one coming in from Luke at MysticMan776. Hey, Steve, one thing I think gets overlooked is the leadoff situation for next year because we have all these power hitters that would be more effective further down the order. I know last year it was Fletch, but he didn't quite get it done. Who do you think fits best leading off? Hey, thanks, Luke. Thanks so much for checking in. I don't think I've seen you check in before, so I appreciate it. I think Justin Upton is probably going to be a guy the Angels might legitimately look at if they're seriously still trying to get something out of him, because remember, he had that really good stretch in the leadoff spot last year. So I think the Angels might actually be looking at him to potentially be the leadoff man next year. That's, again, if they really want him to be a part of it. But yeah, I still think it's Fletch, man. When you're looking at the numbers, I still think it's Fletcher. The roster right now is probably still the guy. If he can return to 2019 form, 2020 form, I think there is no problem with him at the leadoff spot. I mean, you're looking for a leadoff guy, you're looking for a guy that gets on base, and you're looking for a guy that makes contact. David Fletcher, 91% contact rate, even in 2021. So he's still putting the bat on the ball. He just wasn't getting the hits last year. So I still think that Fletch is probably the best option right now. And I imagine if it's not Justin Upton that they're trying that experiment with again to try and get something out of him in the last year, then I still think it's going to be David Fletcher. Luke, you went on to continue your question and actually add another wrinkle into it. And that's going to be the last thing we talk about here in this segment. You said also, I think Brendon Davis gets overlooked as a dark horse candidate to fill the hole at short. It would be nice if you could show some love. Show him some love considering his great showing at all minor league levels last year. Thanks, Luke. Actually, we talked about this all the way back in November with Steve Klauke of the Salt Lake Bees, who got a chance to watch Brendon Davis. This is what he had to say all the way back in November about him.
But a guy that really opened a lot of people's eyes was Brendon Davis. Played the last month and a half in a Salt Lake uniform, playing short, playing left, doing all the little things that you need to do to win. And he hit .333 during his 31 games with us, 8 homers, 25 runs batted in. He just looked like the complete package, a guy who was originally drafted high by the Dodgers a few years back.
So there you go, man. A little bit of love from Steve Klauke. I will leave a link to the prospects week, that the minor league week that we did earlier in the offseason. You can go definitely check that out right now. They are all available here on YouTube. And of course, if you really want to scroll back on our audio side, but they're much easier to find on our YouTube side. So there's your love for Brendon Davis, man. Could he play short? Ooh, I don't know. Honestly, I haven't seen him play personally. So that will be for people much smarter than me to figure out. But sure, if he has a great spring, that shortstop position is still wide open. Back here on Locked On Angels, one last segment here for today. Before we get out of here, we have a voicemail today. Let's take a listen.
Hey, I was watching one of your podcasts about Stroman, and I don't know, man, do you think people are kind of tripping out a little bit? Like, the way I see it, Shohei Ohtani, the dude is an ace. He's an ace. They gave him that year to acclimate in the bigs, right? Looked amazing last year. If he can give us that same kind of production. Sandoval, the way he came along, signing Thor, the new guys coming up, everything. I don't know. Spending all that money, and also these dudes are, you're bidding against a whole bunch of other teams that are wanting these guys. I kind of think people are being a little harsh on the Angels, man. I think they've done amazing, man. I think they've done amazing this offseason. And what usually gets you to the postseason and wins is an elite bullpen, and they're building that, man. I don't know. I just kind of have faith. I have faith in it. One little decent signing like Rodon, man, I think we're in there, bro. But honestly, do you think it could be just being blown out of proportion, or do you think I'm crazy? Thanks, man.
Hey, thanks so much for your voicemail. Didn't leave a name. Sorry, can't address you by name. But thank you so much for our voicemail. If you want to call us, 714-409-6396. It's in the episode description always. Okay, so the Marcus Stroman situation. So we did a full episode on Marcus Stroman, obviously. A couple of them, as a matter of fact. And I think the reason I was so upset at the time it wasn't necessarily that, like, it's the end-all, be-all that Marcus Stroman was the saving grace and was the only option the Angels have, and, that's it. I think what upset me most is that the Angels didn't really seem like they had a chance at getting him. I never saw anything to the contrary to this, that the Angels didn't meet with him. He was here in Los Angeles. He was working out at Pepperdine. He flew out of LAX to Chicago and signed the same day. Like, it seemed really, really odd that the Angels never really seemed to really have a chance at it. I mean, that's just outside looking in. I don't have any inside sources or anything like that. So I think that's what really upset me most, and we talked about it during the Stroman episode, on the What Happened episode, essentially, was that I think a lot of it came from the flurry of things that happened before that, and then it was Stroman as like the tip of the iceberg, and the Angels got quote unquote nothing out of the whole ordeal, and that's how it shook out before the lockout started. So I think that definitely played a major factor. You mentioned Carlos Rodon. Yeah, I still think it's a decent option, but I think what the difference was Stroman was consistency, right? He was the most consistent pitcher available, and essentially was the lowest risk. You know, there's guys that are on the market like Carlos Rodon who is a little risky. You don't know what you're going to get in 2022, but Stroman was a lot more consistent throughout his career, which was extremely enticing as far as I'm concerned. But the Angels kind of put themselves into the corner in the pitching side of things, where it feels like Carlos Rodon is the best option before going into the trade route. So yeah, man, I don't think you're crazy, right? I don't think you're crazy to think that the Angels are looking good and that they've done a good job. I think that's a legitimate take. I'm not going to take that away from you whatsoever. I'm not going to sit here, and I'm never going to sit here and just go like, the season's over, or they lost the offseason. They're not going to. No, I'm not that kind of person. So I don't think you're crazy, man. I think the Angels, we've kind of laid it out already here today. They're not far away, dude. They're not far away. And if things go right and they stay healthy, this team just right here competes better than 2021. I know that's not saying a ton, but you just keep Trout and Rendon, and just right there, the Angels just got a heck of a lot better. And then you factor in if Noah Syndergaard, even if he's just league average or better than league average, that's just a huge boon to last year's squad. So again, they're not far off. If they do get a Carlos Rodon, I think they're done. Pack it up, maybe get a reliever or two, and call it an off season. I still think they're super close. So thanks again for your voicemail. If you ever want to be part of the show, again, 714-409-6396. You can always tweet us. Again, we send our tweet outs on Sunday, so you can answer them on Monday, or I can answer them on Monday, at Locked On Angels and at Steve Granado. Check out my other podcasts. They're linked in the episode description. A baseball docuseries called Our Game, and my movie review podcast called Movies I Should Have Watched. I want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q and Lee Sterling. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us for today's episode of Locked On Angels. We will talk to you on Wednesday. Happy New Year to all. Hopefully you guys celebrated safely and are all happy, and the New Year is treating you well. We'll be back on Wednesday 3 times a week right now until spring training, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.